okay? And then guess what? We have to start the ball rolling in many cases, because when we have parents who've been jaded, who have had bad experiences in school themselves, who feel like, you know, they're not loved and wanted, the way that has to change is that the school staff have to go out and reach out and get those parents and touch them, okay? Really, the leadership has to say, this is important. So these are the 4 core beliefs, all right? Now, what I'm going to talk to you now is about this shift in our definition of partnership, okay? And my colleagues and I wrote a book called Beyond the Bake Sale. This is a book for practitioners. What we did was we really tried to break this down in almost like a cookbook fashion about how you can really engage in these effective partnerships between home and school. So what I'm going to do now is in the beginning of the book, and it talks about the definition of partnership. And the reason why we did this was because when I was deputy superintendent in Boston, what we realized was our principals all had very different definitions of partnership, right? Nobody had the same definition. And we really thought it would be very important to explain what we meant when we said partnership. And we came up with a rubric, which goes from 1 to 4. So what I want you to do is we're going to go through this quickly, and then I'm going to want you to think about the schools that you're affiliated with or that you work with. Where would they land on this rubric, okay? These are places where we hear things like parents don't care about their children's education, and they're the main reason our children are failing. No matter what we do, Dr. Mapp, these are actual quotes, by the way. These are not made up. No matter what we do, Dr. Mapp, they don't come. We provide food, childcare, the works. Still only get 10% of our families showing up for anything. Now, we have a small group of cooperative parents. Some of them don't even have children here anymore. But we like them because they don't give us any lip. And when we need those Title I compacts signed, they're willing to do it. Okay? So they're our little cooperative group, okay? We've got them, but that's about it. Our teachers say we're not social workers. This parent engagement stuff is for social work. We don't do that. We're about teaching and learning. And you know, you say that we should explain our curriculum and talk about data with these parents? I don't know. I think it's be overwhelming for them. Then they really won't come, Dr. Mapp, because we're teaching them things that are too hard for them to understand. Okay? Real quotes now. I'm not making this up, like I said before. And I see some people nodding their heads. So this would be a 1. Look at this. Sharks in the water, right? Doesn't look like a place that you really want to go visit. We discovered that Ann Henderson is also an artist. She drew these for us, okay? All right, so let's move it up a notch to a 2. Come if we call. So this is just basic partnership practice, basic. So parents come to open houses and they're told what to do, okay? Those open houses, parents come in, they sit down, the principal usually tells them the rules. They go to the next room, which is usually their child's classroom, more rules, right? They don't get to say much, out they go, okay? Workshops are planned by the staff. We know what our parents need, Dr. Mapp. We don't need to ask them. They need parenting classes. That's what they need, so that's what we're going to do. We'll teach them how to parent those children. They can come when we say they can come, okay? They can pick up those report cards on the day we say they can come, and we even have a little recording that goes out. So they operate under the mantra, and I'm going to want you to respond. Say, do a little call and response to keep you guys alert, right? So they operate under the mantra, don't call us, we'll call you. Okay? So that's a 2. Let's go to a 3. Getting a little bit better now. So we're having our parent-teacher conferences regularly, or maybe even we're having parent-student-teacher conferences. Yeah. Okay? Parent-student-teacher conferences. Those are wonderful. I've sat in on some of those. Really a great way to bring the parents in because their child is an active part of the conversation. These are schools that have an action team for family engagement. Joyce Epstein, one of my mentors and colleagues, talks about the importance of having a committee in the building that's going to plan your family engagement activities. And I'll emphasize in a moment why that's so important. Now, a lot of school districts are going to parent liaisons and parent coordinators. That's fine, but there should still be a committee. Because what happens is that person ends up getting dumped with all of the family engagement stuff, everything. Sometimes they're actually being used for other things, like lunch monitors and, okay? But they should be helping to coordinate and coach the other staff as to how to engage families,
so
okay?
So it should be a paid position or a volunteer?
In many school districts now that have really are prioritizing family engagement is a paid position.
A family engagement coordinator?
Yes, for a school. And sometimes they will have, if they don't have them in every school, sometimes there'll be family engagement coaches for the district. Just like you have a literacy coach, there'll be a family engagement coach that goes in and helps to coach a school, okay? We have our curriculum nights. Parents are able to raise issues at the PTA meetings, and now we are finally recognizing our multiculturalism in the community. But why isn't this a 4? Not a 4. There's no parent input still, okay? Everything is being decided for families. This is still what we call school-centric family engagement, okay? Not bad, but not the best. Here we go with full-blown partnership. Home visits. These are schools that are finding ways to go to parents instead of having parents come to them. So home visits is only one example. I have principals who do meet the principal nights at the local, Denny's or the supermarkets. They go to the churches. They go to the mosques. They go to the community centers. They meet parents. In other words, they take the show on the road, ladies and gentlemen. They get off their rusty dusties and they go into the community. They learn about the community. They walk into the shops. They introduce themselves, okay? Home visits is something that's really catching fire across the country. School systems are getting funded so that teachers can actually do home visits in the beginning of the school year. Not to check up on families, but to build relationships, okay? But again, if you don't have the budget for the home visits, and by the way, your staff should be trained to do home visits. This is not something they should just do, oh, we're going to do home visits. There's a whole protocol. Phone calls have to be made. Parents have to give you permission. Sometimes if you can't do it at the home, you could do it at the supermarket or the Denny's or the community center, okay? But the point here is that these places that believe in full partnership know that they have to put into play a strategy to go out into the community and say to parents, you are welcome and we want to partner with you. Because when you as a school person goes into the community, that signals to the community that you respect the people who live in it, okay? These are places where everything is connected to student learning. I mentioned to you that open house. We blow it, ladies and gentlemen, when we have open houses where our parents don't leave with a new tip or tool for how to help their children learn. We have these elaborate open houses. Parents walk out of there with a bunch of stuff that they can't use. What would happen if we transformed all of our open houses into a fun night where parents were able to pick up new skills? And guess what? How you figure out what skills they learn should be connected right back to your data. So for example, if you look at your school data, and it's telling you, well, our kids are having problems with comprehension, or they're having problems with, math recognition skills, number recognition skills, then what should you be teaching your parents about at the open house? Okay? So your data should tell you what your theme should be for the year around your family engagement. And then what you do is you make it fun. You make it fun. One of my goals is to change the way we do open houses around the country. Because right now, again, they're done out of compliance. They're done the same old way, and I can tell you when I have a room full of teachers and I ask them to raise their hand if they love open houses, not one person raises their hand. So I say to them, if you were having a party at your house and your guests knew that you didn't want to have the party, they wouldn't want to come. Right? Or they surely would know, because if you're sitting there, oh, I can't wait till this is over. Oh, here comes that next group. Oh, my goodness. You think your parents don't feel that? Okay? So get that group of people who want to be cruise directors when they retire. There are probably some of you in this very room who are great at planning parties. They should be the people on your action team. Look at your data, and that should give you the tools to plan your information with families. And then ask your families what they need. Ask your families what they want. They will tell you. And even if they say they want to learn about how to prepare healthy meals at home, you can still turn that into a learning exercise about math. Okay? So you have to be creative. These are places where there's a clear process for resolving problems that parents and teachers and other school staff work on together. They do research together as a team. So maybe if there's something around comprehension, parents and teachers can actually do a research project together. We had this in Boston at the Orchard Garden School, where, lo and behold, fourth grade team said, we're having problems with comprehension. They called in a group of parents because they'd spent a lot of time on building relationships with families, so they had real trust between themselves and the parents. They had done home visits. They asked their parents, would you like to be a part of a research project? These are parents, don't speak English, low income, work 2-3 jobs, but they gave them things they could do at home and keep track. It was basically Bloom's taxonomy about reading, so they said, ask your children how to predict the ending to the story, and if there were any words that they needed to look up, and explain what's going on. And lo and behold, at the end of the year, when they retested those same kids, their reading comprehension scores had gone up 45%. Okay, and the parents presented at the school professional development meeting. They were the ones that did the presentation with the teachers. Okay, so they worked in partnership. Families are involved in decision making. They sit down, work together, hammer out problems. And no, it's not always easy, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to tell you the honest truth. It's not always easy. But, you know, my grandmother used to say, the slow way is the fast way. Okay? She'd say, take it slow. It might be hard, but in the end, whatever decision you come up with is going to stick. You try to do it the fast way, the minute you leave the room, you know what, right? It all falls apart. When we do these things, parents want to be engaged. They get charged up because, again, you're working on their efficacy and their confidence, right? So what we want to do is we want to join with our families. This is just summarizing a lot of what I've talked about today. This is called the joining process. This is a theory that I came up with, and it's really being, I'm seeing this in so many cases. We just came out with a new book called A Match on Dry Grass, where my colleague Mark Warren and I actually did a study of 6 community organizing groups around the country. And what we found is the joining process is very much at play with those community organizing groups. What we see is that these groups work with school staff and with districts to welcome parents. Again, if parents don't feel that they're welcome, they're not going to come. If they come to that first open house and they see that it's out of compliance, they're not going to come. If they walk into that front office, do I need to say more? And they are not greeted with respect, they're not coming back. How many of you have ever shopped at a Nordstrom's? Okay, me too much, okay? One of the reasons I go back to Nordstrom's is because they're so welcoming. They really take care of you. They make you feel like you're the only customer in the shop, okay? Versus some other places I go into, and you know, I went into a Nordstrom's one time at about 10 of 10. And they, you know, ready to close. And what do most times when you go into a store and it's ready to close, what do the people usually do? Okay? Or can I help you? We're getting ready to close. I went into Nordstrom's one night. Young lady came out. She said, oh, you know, I'll help you. I said, well, I was the one who said, you know, she said, don't even worry about that. She said, I will stay here as long as you want. I'm here to help you, okay? So we have to have a little bit of that Nordstrom's effect in our schools. And I actually have a person who worked for Nordstrom's who does customer service training for school central office and school secretarial staff, okay? Number 2, you have to honor your families, okay? Basically what that means is that you have to respect where they're coming from. They are validated and affirmed for any type of involvement. So this is that whole thing about expanding your definition of family engagement. For example, one of my principals in Boston, Margarita Muñez, she's one of those principals that I talk to about what are your core beliefs around family engagement. What she does is she collects information at that open house. She has this big table. She's got parents that actually, I told her, it's like they assault other parents and bring them over. They're really friendly and say, tell us some of the things that you like to do as a hobby or anything, just anything. And they take it down on a database. And then Margarita and her staff make it their business to call a parent to ask them, could they help out in the way that's aligned with their interests. So for example, Margarita knew that there was a family that she hadn't seen come to the school. So she called their house. They had 3 children at the school. This was a middle school. And when the dad heard that it was the principal on the other end of the phone, what did the dad say? What have my parents done? My kids. What have my kids done, right? Because that's unfortunately a lot of times when we call home, it's always with bad news. Okay, so that has to change. But she said, no, 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 no. She said, no, 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 Mr. Lopez, I'm calling because your wife told us when she came to the school that you are an excellent gardener. So he said, well, yes, I am. She said, well, you know, our front lawn in front of our school needs a little sprucing up. And I would love your expertise on how we can do that. And listen, any day that you want to come, I'll be here. My custodian will come too, Saturday, Sunday, evening, morning. You let us know what's best for you and your schedule. So he said, well, I could come on a Saturday afternoon. She said, no problem. So she met him. The custodian came too because, you know, Margarita has really pushed family engagement so that everybody in the school, from the custodian to the lunch monitors, everybody knows this is a priority, okay? So the dad, you know, came up, he did some drawings, he told them what to plant, they went to Home Depot, they got this and that. Well, of course, then Dad had to come by the school to check because he wanted to see how things were doing. And the next thing you knew, the father was saying, mi escuela, my school, okay? So then he started coming inside. They have a family center in the school where parents can come in to relax and get coffee and meet and have workshops. He started coming in, and slowly but surely he got more involved in some of those activities. But what they did at that school was they didn't have parent engagement only be certain things. So they broadened their definition. So really it's any way a parent can be supportive of their child's learning. So that's one thing you have to do. You have to honor your families where they are at. Again, understand that they may be at level 1 and not at level 2. And then finally, it goes right back to when I said that all your activities should be linked to learning. We actually have a chapter in Bake Sale called Linked to Learning. So everything you do, you want it to be connected back to the kids. I'll give you another example. One of the schools that I studied for my research was the O'Hearn Elementary School. It was a K-5 school, full inclusion school, meaning that all children, its special needs children, were included in the regular classroom. There were no pullouts. And at this school, another principal, incredible in terms of family engagement, okay? He was a person I learned this link to learning piece from. And he said, everything we do at the school is going to be linked to our data and linked to learning. So for a whole year, they concentrated on reading. And they put together a home reading program where parents were asked to read to their children or be read to by their children 3 times a week, 20 minutes at a time. And they had a little fun checklist, and you got points for if you were able to complete it every week. So they did the play Charlotte's Web, and I went to go see it. And just to show you how engaged their families were at this school, there were 223 children at this school. They had to do Charlotte's Web twice, and it'd be about 400 people at each performance. Okay, so 800 folks for 223 kids. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, neighbors, priests, everybody was coming. Okay, community members. During the play, Charlotte's Web, how many of you have read or know Charlotte's Web? Probably everybody knows a little bit about Charlotte's Web. Templeton, the rat, came out and did 2 commercials during Charlotte's Web. Templeton came out and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I am Templeton the rat, and I am here to talk to you about our home reading program at the O'Hearn School. Here at the O'Hearn School, we ask you parents to read to your child 3 times a week, or if you're a struggling reader yourself, have them read to you." And then he said something that was very important, ladies and gentlemen. He said, "Let me demonstrate." Because this is another thing. We hand our parents lists of things to do, but we don't show them, or we don't have them practice, so they don't build up that confidence. He said, "Let me show you that you can use a cookbook, reading a recipe or going over, how much is in a recipe works, that counts. Talking to your children about that Red Sox game, reading a story about it in the paper, that counts. So don't be intimidated, you can do it." He said, "Before the play is over, I'm going to come back out one more time and remind you," which he did. And at the end of that reminder, he said, "And I, Templeton the rat, will sign autographed copies of Charlotte's Web for you at the end of this performance." Okay? This is an 8-year-old. An 8-year-old. But you see what they were doing, ladies and gentlemen? Everything they did, not just the workshops and the curriculum nights. And by the way, don't call it curriculum night because that's boring. I tell people I'm not turning off Project Runway to come to curriculum night. Okay? Not doing it. That's not going to pull me away. That's not going to pull me away. Okay? So you should come up with fun titles. Who's smarter than a 5th grader? And one school I went to did a Price is Right night, and it was a math night. Okay? But everything should be connected to students' learning. That's what parents want. So from our book, Relationships Matter, ladies and gentlemen, I often say that the key to family and community engagement, just like that mantra about location, 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 when we talk about where to find a home or a place of business, with family and community engagement, if you want to make it work, where you have to start is relationship, relationship, relationship. No relationship, no partnership. No relationship, no program. People before program. We got to get away from looking at people as deficits and as assets. And then the other thing is that, our work is really about what we're calling transformational change versus transactional change. What does that mean? That means that when you build these initiatives for families and school staff, we're talking about transforming them, making them believe in themselves, making them work as partners. And that kind of work is transformational. It's not just a transaction. Oh, we got that bill passed. Or we signed off on that legislation. That's a transactional change. People mobilize around transactions. We're talking about organizing people to be these transformative agents of change. And that's what we found in our research, that a lot of the work by these groups is transformational, not just transactional, okay? Don't despair if you can't get everybody on board right off the bat. Don't despair, okay? This is the 20-60-20 rule of change. Start with the willing, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Don't try to force people, because when you try to force people, they're not going to want to do it. What happens is that when the 20% starts to get rolling, make sure there's venues for them to be able to present their findings and their work. Have groups of teachers and parents come and talk to your schools about how great things are now that they're working as partners. Because see, that middle group, I call them the group from Missouri, right? Show me. Once they see that this is working, they're going to say, I want to sign up next. Then you've got this last group. Now, when you've got 60% of the crowd ganging up on them, what my students tell me, they either have to step off or step in, right? Okay? So don't despair. Start slow. This is not going to happen overnight. So I told you about my cake analogy. I'll end with this. We talked about those essential ingredients. So let's really focus in on the cake, okay? I often say that the flour of a cake is really reminds me of the teaching and learning that goes on in our school. It's the ingredient that has the most volume. And we all know that what goes on in that classroom is probably one of the most important ingredients. But in a cake, if you leave out the baking powder, what happens? It doesn't rise, it's gooey. It's not a cake, right? So I want to leave you with this thought. Your family engagement and your community engagement is really the baking powder of student achievement and improvement. Without your family and community engagement, just like without the baking powder, our students will never rise to the levels that we want them to, and neither will our schools. Okay? All right? I think I'm only a few minutes over, and it's time for some Q&A.
How do you encourage more parental involvement in public schools?
Well, two things have to happen. First of all, we have to build the capacity of our school staff to engage in partnerships with our families. Many times we have not done a good job in the higher education world of equipping our teachers and our new school leaders on how to partner with families. So we need a capacity building initiative in that direction. And then also with families, many times they don't actually know the best way to be engaged in their children's education. A lot of times that's mistaken for not caring, but it's actually that many of our families just don't know how. So we also need a capacity building effort to raise the level of our parents' engagement in their children's education and in schools.